Welcome back. About 2 years ago, we decided to release an AI assistant to all our colleagues across Prosus. It's an AI assistant based on agents. And what we want to share now is what we learned in the course of the last 2 years, both in terms of how we use AI assistant, agent-based AI assistant, to amplify our work, change the way we work, but also how we use the same technology to change the applications that we offer to our consumers. Many of you will know Prosus. For those that don't, a few facts about this group. We are a global technology group. We focus predominantly in e-commerce, and e-commerce for us is a full spectrum of things that you might do several times a week, a day, like ordering food, ordering groceries, or perhaps receiving some parcels at home. And the other extreme, decision that you take once in a while, like buying a house or changing car and so on, and everything in between with electronics, fashion, and so on. So we operate platforms in about 100 countries around the world, and these platforms connect the buyer and the seller, the student and the teacher, and the restaurant and the diner. So you see here some of the brands in the group. I want to congratulate Swiggy. Swiggy is based in India. Swiggy had a successful IPO today, so congratulations to Swiggy. Because of the nature of what we do, we had to start investing in artificial intelligence, machine learning early on. I won't go through the process, but in any case, you can imagine that we transact billions of transactions every day. Therefore, machine learning is at the core of what we do. It has to be because it fuels growth. So we started 2018. At this moment, the ecosystem of AI experts, data scientists across the group is about 1,000 people with several hundred models in production. And we also measure hundreds of millions of dollars of impact in practice with all these models. So AI is core to our growth. What I want to share, however, is what we learn in two cases. The first one, how we use as AI agents to amplify our work. And I talk about Tokan. It's our own assistant that we developed in-house, and I'll explain in a second why. And then how the same technology, the same core artificial intelligence agents power also OLX Magic, which is a platform that we offer to our consumers in e-commerce. Let's start with Tokan. It's our personal and team assistant of Prosus. What it does, well, as you can imagine, it is a very general assistant. It is designed for everybody in the group to experiment with artificial intelligence, with generative AI and LLMs, and it lives in Slack because a lot of our engineering teams are on Slack or on the web. It's agent-based. It is agnostic compared to LLMs. It uses all the LLMs out there. Of course, it has preferences. It connects to our databases. It's designed for our own use cases, which is the reason why we decided to develop it in-house. There's strong security and privacy. It is designed to produce analytics and insights, respecting privacy, of course, and it's composable in the sense that companies in the group can take pieces and integrate them in their own applications. At this moment, it is offered only to our employees. Well, of course, we have some external users, but the focus here is how to make our companies better. Also the companies, not only that we control, but also the companies that we invest in, where we might have a minority participation. So the reason why we built it essentially is one, and it has to do with the fact that once we started doing large-scale field tests of LLMs, so it was about 2020, which was early, and GPT-3 was not really good for much, but it was promising. But we had the impression it could offer a number of solutions to a huge number of use cases we couldn't really solve before. People that were using that in our field tests were coming up with solutions, ideas that we didn't really expect. So we came very quickly to the conclusion we can't really dictate how this is going to evolve. The best thing we can do is to give the best possible tools to everyone that can test them and can figure out by themselves what it can do for them. So we call this a collective discovery process. It's a large collective discovery exercise where everybody in the group has the possibility of using this assistant to make sure that they can work better, faster, deeper, whatever makes value for them, but also they can test use cases that can go to consumers. So when we started back in 23, so when we started in summer 22, so it was before ChatGPT. So in 23, when we started measuring adoption, at that time it was perhaps 1,000, 2,000 people. About 50% of all the usages of this tool were engineering-based. So engineers were the first group of people that were convinced that this could make their life easier, and in particular developers, software engineers therefore, but also product managers and so on. However, this tool had a lot of limitations, and the main one is this. We talked about earlier this in one session before. Every time you interacted with the tool, you had 4 icons. The first one, so 4 emoticons. The first one is thumbs up, the second one is thumbs down, then of course, love. And there's one specific one that we had to add, and that's Pinocchio. Is when you signal that the tool made things up. You're lying to me. You're really lying to me. I can't trust you. October 22, when we measured this, it was about 10%. So it means 1 in 10. It's just an answer that you cannot really trust, but you don't know which one. So it's very hard to use the tool at that time. Now, time goes by, you can see how this number of hallucination went from 10% to about 1%, where it lingers now. We believe that that 1% will either be there, stable, and is probably something you cannot reduce, but in several cases we can put sufficient guardrails around that it can still be completely removed for specific use cases. Why did it happen? Because models became better, because users became better using the tool, so they don't go where it doesn't work, but because also we introduce agents. So agents is one of the key for making these tools function better. Somewhere around beginning of this year, so January 2024, we introduced agents. And when we talk about agents, this is the stack that we use. The main components are the framework, the orchestration, and the set of tools. So you can access this stack through Slack or through the web or through APIs. It goes to an agentic framework which decides how to unpack what you want to do in pieces that you can execute in parallel. It then figures out which tools you can use. It goes to a router that picks the tools, and then of course there's a loop of reflection that goes on. But in fact, all these components here is what make this agent stack work. I'm sure many others in this conference today will have similar stacks or perhaps something else that we can learn from. There is also an important element here, which is that of insights. There is another model that lives inside this stack, and it is designed to create statistics about usage. It is not designed to look at what goes on, but to create, to group the conversation, say it's about learning, it's about a certain software language and so on, which is what helps us build the next version of this one in these mechanics of continuous learning. If you look at how the tool works, this is a simple example. It's a data explorer. So it's an agent which is used by people that want to get access to data in English. So they don't know how to create queries, therefore they go to Tokan, and Tokan is connected to the data lakes, and you can figure out an answer to something which is expressed in English. Of course, what it needs to do is find out which tables you have to use, which columns, create the query, execute the query, find out if everything works, there are no errors, otherwise come back and change the plans, and it can use a variety of tools. In this case, it uses query creator, executor, but eventually also the creation of a diagram. All this set of tools is part of the normal, let's say, agent application, and we can see this becoming the standard of what our assistants are going to look like. At present, it means after the introduction of agent-based type of assistants, we see that the engineering tasks, the engineering usage has gone down and the non-engineering goes up, which is, by the way, this also corresponds with the fact that this has become much more usable across the board, so many more non-engineers are using this. 4159, which is 4060, it is more or less the technical, non-technical composition of our teams, broadly speaking. It is used by 24 companies at this moment, more than 15,000 mentioned before, about 20,000 use it continuously, and is getting very close to about 1 million requests per month. What have we learned from all this? The first thing that I want to underline is that we made the bet early on that the costs of running this tool would be acceptable. When we designed the first version of this one, it was about, let's say, March 23, even before. So the cost of tokens in GPT-4 at the time GPT-3 at that time, were extremely high. So the bet was it's going to go down. This is what happened. It went down 90–80%. That is fairly common with everything that we see in all the other models. However, that's not the whole story. If you look at the cost of the agent interactions, this is between May this year and August this year. So a very short amount of time, just 4 months. And you can see that the cost, which is the yellow line, the cost per token went down about 50%. At the same time, the number of questions went up, and I think it is the blue line, but the tokens per question went up even further. So it's the red line here. Because these tools require many more calls to the LLMs, many more interactions, and because the questions of the users, because the tool works, become more complicated and complex. So it means that the trend of cost going down and the users goes up sort of compensates, and we can see the green line, which is the cost per interaction. This moment it lingers around 25 cents per time you actually touch the assistant, you go through an agent process and so on. I think this is interesting because this green line is what eventually will drive adoption at total cost of ownership of this. At this level it is good, hopefully it goes down, but it could also go up. Curious to see what you experience as well. The next thing that I want to focus on is some of the things we learned about the impact. Of course, we do this in particular for work because we want to make sure that everybody in the group works better, works faster, works more independent, and so on. There is one thing that we can always measure, and it is time saved. And here you can see, again, the model that lives inside Tokan that looks at the tasks, which are there, the rows. And then you can see these bars here is the amount of time somebody, let's say the intensity of requests, how popular the requests are, and the small numbers there is the time saved. So this model has been trained to recognize how much time you save every time you ask for something in comparison to the best option that you have. It also includes the fact that sometimes we're wasting your time because you try to get something, but you don't get what you want. Overall, it is about 50 minutes per day, 48 minutes per day, 10%. Question is, what do I do with that? That's the first question. Second question, is this the main and most important thing? If you ask users, it is no. The answer is no. What users say is that yes, they can work a little bit faster, but the main thing is that they can work with more independence. So they don't have to tap on the shoulder of a colleague to get the answer, they can find the answer themselves. The third one is that they can work outside of their comfort zone. They might not be good at coding in a certain language, but they become good at coding in a certain language because they have this tool available. And the fourth one is because it gets them going. So they eliminate the writer block, if you want. You can start going. These things together, it's like having the entire organization a bit more senior, which probably is far more important than the 50 minutes saved per day. Also because these 50 minutes are spread over a long array of micro-productivity bursts, which is non-trivial to get them into automations. However, the other thing that we also learned is that if you really want to get the value of all this, you need to change the way you work. It's not only improve the way you work now, you have to change the way you work. Seems obvious, but when you see it in practice with numbers, it is much more impactful. Here this iFood is the largest food delivery company in our group, is based in Brazil. And we work with them to give everybody access to data in English. So it means everybody that needs that has a question about data, be that in customer support, in operations, marketing, and so on, can ask that to the data lake in English. Obviously, you can see that it has an impact in time saving. So it automates about 21% of the requests, meaning that 21% of the requests you can do through the agent, to the assistant. You don't have to go to the data lake, create the queries, and so on. So that's the automation that we mean. You also see the one thing on the right is that in some other cases, you have an automation effect, but you also have an additional work effect. In this case, the fact that you can solve these data questions with the tool make it possible to solve a vast amount of backlog questions that otherwise would be solved in a much longer amount of time. So the first users of this tool, we thought they were the analysts, the data analysts. This is the group of people that are expert with the data and they know how to query the data. And that, in fact, was the case. However, the real savings, the real change is when everybody else is actually answering the question directly. So we don't really want the data analysts to be the only users of this. Actually, we want the opposite. We want the entire organization to be good at querying the data in such a way that you don't have to go to the data analyst for doing this. And this is exactly what happened. Most of the questions are solved at the source, which removes about 190 to 200 man days every month from the data analyst, which altogether leads to a reduction of time to insight of 75%. So time is, yes, important or not important, but the important thing is that once we realize that, we need to act on the organization to make sure that that actually happens. This is what we learned with applying some of the things that we learned. We publish blogs about this. If you're interested, please reach out. We're happy to share. There are many other things that we learned, but they also have to do with the way we developed applications. They use the same technology that powers Tokan. And I want to invite on stage Paul, who's going to share some work on magic.
Thank you, Euro. So indeed, you talked about 2 agents in production that we're sharing a little bit more about today. And the second one is one that we co-developed with one of the companies that's part of the group, called OLX. OLX is a very large online marketplace for classified. So you can basically buy and sell secondhand goods, but also services. Think of electronics, fashion, but also real estate, cars, jobs, and so on. They're present in many countries all over the world, and we've been working with them to figure out what does the next generation of the shopping experience powered by GenAI look like. So I want to share that with you. We called it OLX Magic. And before I show that to you, I'm going to show you a demo. This is powered by agents. Just like Tokan, it borrows and takes a lot of the technology that we've built in Tokan and puts that inside this experience. But I want you to have a look at some of the features that you'll see highlighted throughout the experience that many of them will be powered by GenAI to better help the buyer to discover and find the products that they are looking for. So currently the app is live, OLX Magic is live, particularly in Poland, and you can go to it, and a lot of it looks and feels like a traditional e-commerce experience. You go in, you put in a query like an espresso machine, and immediately you'll get a couple of results. Those results, in particular, you can see the blue teal colored features are then refined. It suggests to you, do you want to look for semi-automatic espresso machines or other filters and criteria that help the user narrow down what they're looking for? And then the results get updated according to that choice that the user made, suggested by OLX Magic. You can also go in and see these custom carousels that are generated on demand for every search query, personalized to the user. You can also go in and refine your search and say, well, actually, I'm looking for machines with a milk foamer. And you can go in and now a custom filter that you've basically put in by describing gets added to the search query, and the results get updated live with that query, again, powered by GenAI and LLMs in the background. And one of the features I love most about this experience is you've got these highlighted sort of contextual filters per item that say, okay, this has got a milk foam or this one doesn't, that are trying to address and highlight the things you care about as a buyer. One of the other GenAI-powered features is a smart compare. So what you can see here is these 2 products that were selected by the user are put side by side with the criteria that are identified on the spot for this particular items with a recommendation for the end user based on what the query has been so far. And so, as you can see here, this experience of how you start to find and interact items on the OLX website is now infused and sprinkled with all sorts of GenAI features. And we've seen from users that this really changes the way that they interact and are able to find what they're looking for, not just a query and set of results, but a much more assistive, but also advisory experience that they get powered by OLX Magic. And as, of course, the theme of the conference is agents in production, also wanted to highlight some of the tools that we've built and put under the hood of OLX Magic to make this possible. And as you can see, it's got a lot of the elements that traditional agent frameworks and products have that we've seen others talk about. It's got access to tools. It's powered by a set of very powerful large language models. It has the capability to plan, to figure out, okay, what are the actual steps I need to take to get to the right answer. It has memory, which in particular is important, not just for the context of the conversation, but also the context related to this particular user that's trying to find something on the OLX website. Of course, the tools that OLX Magic has access to are very specific to its job, right? It has access to search on the OLX catalog, right? In a visual search way, in a text search way. It has access to the World Wide Web, the web search, so it can also pull in the latest information about what folks are saying about different products. And that together basically creates the ability for OLX Magic to answer and guide the user through the journey. Now, one of the things that I also want to highlight is what we've learned. Again, as you put agents into productions, these new products that are powered by Gen AI, there's a lot of things that we're discovering along the way, and the first one is related to actual user experience. So I think probably precipitated by the ChatGPT moment, everybody out there was trying to build a ChatGPT for X, for OLX, or for iFood, or for any other website or online experience you can imagine, which basically starts with a conversation, blank canvas, where you can start and write and ask about, for example, a marketplace. What I've just shown you is a couple of iterations, product iterations down the road, because we learned that sort of very blank canvas conversational experience actually is so far away from what a user expects to do in a commercial setting that we needed to go back to a lot of the patterns that users are familiar with when they go and search for items online. The second is about agents and the frameworks that we build. It isn't just about agents, it's about e-commerce agents. And what I mean with that is that the systems we put together, the agentic systems, need to actually cater to the e-commerce journey, which means that the tools and the prompts and the evals and any of the other components, the memory, for example, needs to be catered specifically for personalization. The guardrails need to be built for an e-commerce journey. So you get this almost like specific type of agent and its system that you're building. It's in many ways builds on the same components that we talked about in, for example, Tokan, which is a much more horizontal agent experience, but is refined and constrained to that e-commerce role. And the third is that your Gen AI assistant is only as good as your search, and it's kind of connected to the second point of e-commerce agents. The search journey and the pipelines that we've built historically didn't work for the OLX Magic experience, and we needed to really build them up from the ground, think about how we created embeddings for listings based on titles, images, descriptions, and then build an entire pipeline of the ability to retrieve what the most relevant items are using the prompt and LLMs to filter out what items were most relevant from the user conversation. And so it required a lot of work to get us to this point. So I think this is the moment where we take a couple of questions. I think Euro and Dimitrios are ready to join us on stage. In case you have any questions about this particular set of agents in production that we shared with you today.
There are a lot of questions coming through, and the key is that I think one of the ones that's the most popular in the chat is how many human hours did this take to put together?
Which one? The assistant, Tokan, or
OLX Magic?
Well, Magic has been around for a couple of months now, but as I mentioned, it's gone through various iterations. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different things that we discovered, and the experience has absolutely changed a lot. The underlying tools, the LLMs, the prompts. So we're on a journey that started about, like I said, months ago. For Tokan, it's more years, like you described, Euro. So that's something that we started with some of the earliest LLMs out there. So we've been on this journey for a while now.
Yeah.
And what about Tokan?
Yeah, Tokan has been the one that's been longest.
The biggest.
Over 2 years, yes.
Do you have a number of people that are working on it, actual human hours?
Yeah. Well, we don't know the human hours, but the team of Tokan was at 15 people, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, cool. 15 people working 2 years.
Powered by agents as well. So
powered by agents.
Oh, well, that gets to a great question. Yeah, on the the way that you're looking at how you're saving time, what is that? Can you break that down a little bit more? Because is it just subjective? Is it?
No. It's so we train the model to understand the difference between working with the assistant and working without. So there is a model that lives inside Tokan, and the only thing it does, it looks at, has been trained first, right? It's an LLM, right? It looks at all interaction, looks at, this interaction is about, I don't know, debugging code, right? And for this type of thing, we have seen through the training set that you save a certain amount of time, right? So it actually estimates the time saved by looking at interaction, looking at, let's say, comparison activities.
So here's another great one. Now the chat's coming through for real. There's a lot of questions. All right, so
I've seen many about costs, right? Because they touch on about, let's say, why do the costs go up while the token costs go down, right?
Yeah.
I think we haven't published anything about the specific, how many tokens we use into the end-to-end journey from the moment you have a question to the moment you get the answer and all the loops in there. We probably should do that. I don't think we have done, right?
We haven't done, but I can see there's builders on the watching, because this is probably the most exciting thing. You can see how the number of tokens per question changed once we introduced agents, the different types of cost per token as we introduce cheaper, smaller models for specific tasks. So there's a lot of very interesting applied lessons that we learned, and we maybe should publish a little more about that.
Yeah, we just publish it because it's useful for everybody. Yeah.
On this, someone was saying that potentially there's ways to do prompt catching to minimize costs. Are you doing any of that?
Yeah, we do. I mean, we've probably tried everything you can imagine in terms of making sure that we optimize cost from switching models, picking the right model for the right question, caching, using reserved instances, our own GPUs. We've tried all the different combinations you can imagine.
This is the best we can get so far.
All right. Well, speaking of money, this is the last question too, and there's a ton in the chat, so I'll let you guys answer the rest in the chat, but how are you looking at the ROI of OLX Magic?
Oh, in terms of, listen, OLX Magic has just started, so what we measure, we haven't published that yet, but what we measure is the metrics that make sense for e-commerce, right? Which are transactions, which are engagement, and so on and so on. And we see the upside. But this is something that we are not sharing yet because it's still a project in development and it's rapidly developing. But I can tell it is positive.
In general, we look at this as make it work, then make it fast, and then make it cheap.
Make it cheap is in the end.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, guys. I really appreciate you doing this.